I'm going to say something pretty wild, but I read once that humans in essence only have two emotions, love or fear. And so if I love something, I'm going to approach it with, a certain energy. And if I'm afraid of it, I'm going to resist it. And so facts for me are simply just another way of saying like a passion, a love for something. So when I started Imaware, I realized very quickly that what I have read about healthcare is about 0.001% of what I need to know in this job. And I'm not, credited or qualified to do this job when it comes to having a doctorate or others. So I surrounded myself with some of the most amazing people in the world who were celiac doctors, celiac scientists, celiac researchers. And that was the first test we actually focused on, was identifying celiac disease for people who had no idea they had this condition.
Hey, and welcome to the Health Business Builder Show. In today's episode, I'm chatting with Jani Tuomi. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. An entrepreneur who turned his brother's devastating battle with cancer into a mission to revolutionize the healthcare industry. He's the co-founder of Imaware, a company making at-home health testing accessible, and he's also very involved in the Austin health startup tech scene. We talk about building trust in the healthcare industry, which is super important, using AI to predict and to prevent disease, and why curiosity is the ultimate entrepreneurial superpower. Plus, Yanni shares his love for F1 racing and lessons learned from the startup scene. Let's get started. Yanni, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Good. Well, thanks for having me.
I'm excited. I don't know if you remember where we met. Do you remember where we met?
I think I showed up at one of your coffees.
Yeah.
On 6th and Congress.
The reason that I wanted to bring this up real quick is because I think this story is hilarious, because my girlfriend tells me it all the time. So for anybody that doesn't know, I host these meetup events for health-related business owners here in Austin. And there was one in particular. It was kind of like an invite-only type deal, and I invited a bunch of people. And I never actually met Yanni at this point. I think I probably just connected on LinkedIn, maybe. I have no shame. I'll reach out to anybody. But Michaela, my girlfriend, she's like, whenever I bring up your name, I was like, oh yeah, I have a podcast with Yanni. And I was like, do you remember who that is? She's like, oh yeah, I remember him very distinctly. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, he got to your event and he was basically like, where's Corey? And went right up to me, like, introduced yourself, wanted to say hi. And I think that's great. And the reason I wanted to tell that is, like, I think that you have a lot of intentionality in probably most things that you do. And I think that's great. And I think that's probably one of your assets for sure, is just like having a lot of intentionality about the things that you're going after. And I think that was just like a great microcosm of kind of Yanni and who he is. He kind of goes after what he wants. So I wanted to bring that up.
Oh, thanks. I can just picture, she's coming to say hi to me. I'm like, get out of my way. I need to find Corey. I'll go apologize for that later. No, that's awesome.
She didn't take offense to it at all, but yeah. I just thought that was great. She's like, oh yeah, like he knew what he wanted. I was like, but I appreciate that. So because like now, I feel like this has been a long time coming to finally do this. Yeah, no kidding. We've been going back and forth for a while.
Yeah.
But where I want to start is that you have a lot of experience in the healthcare, in the tech industry. And I know that there's a bit of a personal story that kind of got you started down this path of healthcare in general. If you don't mind sharing that story, is kind of how we got started.
Yeah, would love to share that. So yeah, I was a computer science grad, building product, helping big banks make more money, helping big companies just become more efficient. I spent a good 15 years doing that. And then, my brother getting cancer was really what shifted gears for me. It was undiagnosed for 18 months. And it was really my mom that diagnosed him as a nurse. She's like, all these doctors are saying it's back pain, it's muscle, it's physio related, when she's like, it's something much bigger than that. So she ultimately was able to figure out that there was a tumor in his stomach, and that led to a 911 call, and the rest is history. But yeah, I watched my brother go from a 6'4", 250 pound, just big physical guy, to 6'4" and 110 pounds after chemo and radiation and the surgery to remove all those tumors was done. So that really kind of shocked me into, holy cow, if this can happen to him, who else is this happening to? And like, I swear my purpose in life became, how do I make sure this doesn't happen again? Because helping banks make lots of money in fintech and digital this and that is awesome and fun, but doesn't really feel fulfilling. So yeah, that led me to start to talk to doctors and learn about screening versus, diagnostics, and sick care versus healthcare. And I almost applied to a company called Theranos. Thank God I didn't. And later that year, after Theranos imploded, I got to meet this doctor who had helped debunk Theranos and was looking at prevention and saying that, hey, we can actually identify disease before symptoms take hold. And I'm like, that's exactly who I want to be beside. I want to start to work with people like that. And that's when I learned all about screening and small volume blood testing and at-home testing versus at-lab testing and all this stuff. So that led me to start Imaware with that doctor, my first healthcare startup in 2017.
Damn. Do you feel like you mentioned it briefly about just like having experience in product? Were you able to, I mean, like what were the lessons that you brought over from your experience in the tech world and that experience in finance over to now healthcare as a or as a product?
Yeah. Well, one thing I didn't bring over was the fake it till you make it of product, put out the MVP, hope that your users are your testers and that they like it enough to give you feedback. You fix it, you improve it, you keep iterating. That definitely doesn't work in healthcare. And I obviously you kind of figure that out very quickly in diagnostics, that you can't put out a test that's 10% accurate and hope that it gets to 20%. But what I did learn in that is that you can actually build quickly and responsibly at the same time. Quickly doesn't mean half-ass, pardon my language, but I know a lot of software people are like, let's just ship it. And it's like, actually, hey, let's set a goal, let's hit it, but also like iterate on that. And so, yeah, iterative product development in healthcare is possible. You just have to know what success looks like. So with the way we launched Imaware, we were able to go out and identify cohorts of people who were already known positives for celiac disease and work with them to see how effective our test was. And so we weren't putting people's lives at risk, and we were building fast. And so just like, I would almost say common sense ways to think about how to build, instead of, again, just, build at all costs and sort of hope the user can figure it out for you.
I know that you have this idea of leading with facts over fear. Can you maybe elaborate on that and like how that showed up in maybe the earlier days of Imaware when you were just starting things out?
Yeah, I'm going to say something pretty wild, but I read once that humans in essence only have two emotions, love or fear. And so if I love something, I'm going to approach it with, a certain energy. And if I'm afraid of it, I'm going to resist it. And so facts for me are simply just another way of saying like a passion, a love for something. So when I started Imaware, I realized very quickly that what I have read about healthcare is about 0.001% of what I need to know in this job. And I'm not, credited or qualified to do this job when it comes to having a doctorate or others. So I surrounded myself with some of the most amazing people in the world who were celiac doctors, celiac scientists, celiac researchers. And that was the first test we actually focused on, was identifying celiac disease for people who had no idea they had this condition. And so the love and passion that I had for this, the desire to find facts, first led me to surround myself with people who had lots of facts and could teach me those things and to also help us build our product. So yeah, the first thing we did as a company was formed a clinical and scientific advisory board of pretty amazing people. And when I shared with them what I was up to and why I was doing this and what the bigger purpose of, helping people identify disease, every single person was like, how can I help? So yeah, I thought that was just so amazing.
So my Achilles heel, which sounds like might be your strength, and I'd be curious if it's always been this way, but my Achilles heel is for sure, I have control issues. And which means that it's very hard for me to ask for help, to, like you said, surround yourself with other people, to like get other people's inputs and to find feedback and to iterate on those processes. That's for sure one of my weaknesses. I'm not really good about that. I don't know where it comes from, to be honest. Fear of letting go, maybe. I don't know. Control issues, maybe something in my childhood. Who knows? But it seems, based on what I've seen of Yanni today, I don't know what the Yanni of yesterday looked like, but from the Yanni I know today, you seem to be very good about getting the right people in the right position and surrounding yourself with people smart. Have you always been like that? Or is this like something you had to develop?
I think I've developed it for sure, but I know all my life I've always had this title of like jack of all, master of none. And I think at first I used that to sort of degrade myself, which is like, hey, I'm not an expert in something, so let me learn from someone who is. And so I never had a shame around asking for it because I just automatically thought less of myself. So I used it as almost like it was definitely a negative mindset in the beginning. And then I started to learn like, hey, this is actually easy to go talk to people because they love to share what they know. People love to talk about themselves or what they know, right? And so I started switching my approach to being like, yeah, I'm not a master in anything, to, yeah, I'm a jack of all, master of none kind of person by design. I wish to be this. I love to learn things. I'm curious, tell me more. And I flipped that from like a weakness to a strength. And and it's now being in the startup space, I think it just like is the perfect way for me to work and engage with other people.
What did that look like in some of the earlier days of Imaware, and like what were maybe the stumbling blocks there? Because I'd be curious as to, let's say somebody is in earlier in their business or earlier in a startup and they're trying to get the pieces of pie together. Would you even recommend that they start doing that early, or is this just like at the point where it's just like, nope, you got to wear all the hats at this point, like don't even worry about it?
Well, healthcare is heavily regulated. And even though I came from Canada and I understood what regulated healthcare meant, in the US, there are a lot of regulations. And so I think it's very easy to get caught up in the fear of the regulatory system and to not start because, hey, there's FDA, there's all this stuff. And so I can't possibly know how to work with them. Could be such a fear or a hill to climb that most people don't get started. But guess what? They're just people too, doing their job. And so, yeah, I think the lesson out of that is just get started and ask a ton of questions. And especially in healthcare, if you have that mindset around like, hey, I don't want to do harm, I have an empathetic view on wanting to help people, everyone will come to your support. Yeah.
I will say if control is my weakness, I will say my strength is curiosity though. Kind of like to my point about reaching to you on LinkedIn, or actually one of my best friends here in Austin, I slid into his DMs. I was like, hey man, just recently moved to Austin. And I'm just always innately curious about people, because you're right, you're spot on. Like people love to talk about themselves. And it's definitely some advice that I give to other people is like when they go to my networking events or people try to figure out like, how do I network or how do I build these connections? And it's like, it's real basic. Just ask them about themselves. They will tell you everything.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Like yourself is your favorite topic for most people.
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
Oh, that's so funny. I started my career at Deloitte. And so kind of the joke was we didn't necessarily know how to help the client, but we would know how to ask them. And then they would tell us, and then we would just play it back to them, right? So it's really true.
Mirroring, right?
Yeah.
Like you just mirror and echo back what they say, and you keep repeating it, and then they'll keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. It's honestly sales at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's like most people think sales is about like pitching or trying to convince somebody, and it's not at all. It's actually literally just listening and understanding the problem, and then just echoing it back to them so that they understand that you understand them.
Yeah.
That's 90% of sales.
Yeah, exactly.
So moving forward here a little bit. So you've been doing, so you said it was 2017 that you started Imaware, and now over that, what is that?
7-8 years.
7-8 years. Okay. Give us the life lessons through that. I mean, that's a long time to be building a business, and now you're sort of, it sounds like nobody actually knows what you do now, but you're kind of still involved, kind of not involved. Like, what are the big lessons in those?
Yeah. So I think there's 5 big things through those years. If you want to run your business, don't go to B school, because my wife went to B school and you learn theoretically how to do all this. And then 99% of that gets thrown out, when you go to your first pitch, when you have your first missed milestone, when you have your first angry client. It's like all of it comes back to, how do I as a human being actually respond in this moment, right? And so there's just so much around personal growth, right? That school or a textbook just can't teach you the same way, right? It's great to read how Tony Robbins might handle this, but like, how am I going to handle it, right? Big moments are taking capital and realizing that these professional bankers want a piece of your business, and they will win. They're out to win just as much as I'm out to win in my business. So they're going to find ways to win, even if I'm not winning. So venture capital, I tell founders to be very aware of who you're working with, right? That venture partner that you're going to work with is going to be a big influence in how you build your business. So picking the right venture partner, I think, is very, very important. Really recognizing the difference between like DTC businesses, direct to consumer businesses, and then your B2B businesses like enterprise. I had a venture guy tell me, he's like, first time founders go DTC and second time founders go B2B. He said most of the time DTC is so hard, and simultaneously there's a big company who wants to buy what you're selling. And so I thought that was really interesting perspective to say, like, yes, you want to change the world, you want to interact directly with your customers, and at the same time, it's hard to market one customer at a time when you can go get a huge company who buys your product, and you're doing much better. So finding that balance between being able to impact and change the lives of people while also building a business that's sustainable. So I've kind of come to this 80-20 rule where it's like, let's do DTC. Let's get that product iterating fast, getting awesome feedback. And let's find some enterprise channels where we can build a sustainable business, but not lose sight of the fact that we truly are helping, people at the end of the day.
Is there anything you would have done differently?
I would have definitely not spent as much on advertising in the beginning. In healthcare, you do have to just build a scientific credibility of your product. And there's no amount of like SEO, ads, influencers that can help you rush that, right? So if you need to get an adoption from, a set of clinicians or a type of clinician, go out and get that first. If doctors are saying like, hey, I can get behind your test, I can get behind your product, I can get behind your digital app, then you layer in the marketing on top of that. But as much as in the beginning, I was like, hey, let's buy some ads, let's invest in SEO, the consumers will love this. They would just buy our product and go to their doctor, and the doctor would say like, oh, you can't trust at-home tests. Just carte blanche, can't trust them. So that first year I learned that lesson, paused, spent a lot of time in the clinical community, and then went back out, and yes, our tests became trusted by doctors. So yeah, I think DTC, you get caught up in this like, yeah, you're going to consumers, you're going directly to them. But you can't forget about the healthcare system that supports these people at the end of the day, like doctors and nurses.
Well, I think what you're hitting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, is just that aspect of the foundation of any business, especially in the healthcare though, is trust. Because like pushing ads to anything without the basis of why should I trust you and your product and your service or whatever it is almost useless, right? Because because ads at the end of the day, definition of marketing or advertisement specifically, is just like to make known. That is the point of an advertisement, to make something known. Mm-hmm. So although you can push ads behind something and make it known by a lot of people, if they don't trust it, they're not going to buy it and they're not going to adopt it.
Yeah.
So I think there was kind of like a missing step there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like you said, and I'm not really, or initially was definitely not a marketer, right? Being a product guy, I just build things.
Right.
And then somebody in marketing would make sure that product would move or be adopted and things like that. So as a founder, you get to wear a lot of hats. And that's where I learned, trust is huge. And it's not just trust in one domain. It's like trust with doctors, trust with scientists, trust with patients, and trust with just everybody. And so building trust really meant actually I had to do something, which was learn to trust myself and start talking about why this matters. And I think that's the power of founder-led businesses is, why are you even in this in the first place? So in the first year, I didn't really tell my story at all. Why am I in healthcare in the first place? Why is a non-healthcare person trying to build a test for something? And the moment I started talking about why this mattered to me, then trust in me happened, then trust in Imaware happened, then all of a sudden we started to take off. So what I learned through that process as a founder is I get to trust myself here and start talking about myself in the bigger picture of screening and sick care versus healthcare, right?
I'd be curious as to what your thoughts are on founder fit. And I think that's kind of what you're hitting on that right there, is that people talk a lot about product market fit, which is obviously incredibly important. Like if nobody wants your product, nobody's going to fucking buy it. But I think there's also something equally true to be said about having the right person in the position to be able to run that business. I think it goes back to exactly what we're hitting on again, is just like the foundation of a business for the most part, I think, is the trust piece of it. Is sure, you can trick anybody once to buy your product or service, but they're not going to return if they didn't get what they expected, and then you lose trust and then the business dies, right? Yep. And so just be curious as to what your thoughts are on founder fit, because I agree. I think that one of the biggest advantages of your personal story is the fact that it's relatable as to why you got into building it and why you built it in the first place. And so to not share that, obviously now looking back, we know that's probably was a mistake, but what's your thoughts on that founder fit piece of it though? Is do you think if a founder doesn't have that emotional backstory, or do you think there's scenarios where it could work? I don't know. I'd be curious.
I think we see a lot of examples of companies that go in for the financial win, do okay, but don't thrive. But the people who actually make this a passion of theirs may not initially thrive, but will long-term thrive. I really do believe that a founder who's only in it for the money will absolutely get swept away. And the founder who's in it for the right reasons and also surrounds themselves with the right people and knows how to do all these other things, but is baked in with a passion, I think outdoes the founder who doesn't have that passion.
Definitely.
And there's a lot of luck and market timing and all those other things. So separate that for an aside. And yeah, absolutely. I think you see some really amazing stories of founders who share stories like building in public, right? I love those types of founders. I think they've got awesome courage to be like, I just quit my job day one. Here I am in front of my screen. I'm doing something new. I think that's pretty amazing. I definitely didn't have that courage in the beginning, and I've been working to build that up. But
I saw a guy on Instagram basically journey the entire thing recently with just a coffee shop. He started selling, I think, just like out of his home, and then he got a little truck, and then he got a little spot at like a strip mall, and it was just funny to see him just hustling. Because like anyone in the hospitality space, I would never do a hospitality business, personally speaking, like coffee, restaurant, any of that. No.
Yeah.
Because that is the ultimate hustle grind. You're there every single day, all day, every day. But I do appreciate the hell out of it when people do it. Kind of to your point too, I wanted to hit real quick on, I think that's one of the things that I guess me personally, probably a lot of reason why I just love Elon Musk, man. I don't care what anybody says about him, but I think he's just the greatest. And I think it's because his mission. He wants to go to Mars. Mm-hmm. And he's going to do whatever it takes. Yeah. And it's fun to watch, whether you support it or believe it or don't believe it. It's just fun to see somebody just on a mission and to pursue it. I don't know. I'm curious what you think. But
I mean, he is a definitive entrepreneur, right? I mean, there's no denying what he's done, how he's done it, his vision for the world, his vision for where humanity can go. I mean, he's like modern day Iron Man, right? Tony Stark. So, and yeah, he's getting caught up in things that maybe are outside his domain, as people do, right? And I don't really want to comment on that much, but from an entrepreneurial perspective, I mean, he knows his businesses. He has a vision, and he inspires people to achieve things that maybe normally they wouldn't achieve. And he does it in I think a charismatic way. I think people who work for him, I've heard so many people who say like, yeah, the guy's incredible. And then yes, others will say, not so much, but the ones that stick and stay and grow with him, I mean, these people have changed the world. It's not just Elon, but it's who he inspires, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not to admire every aspect of his life, right? Like it's just, and I think that's true for anybody. Like Trump is a great example. It's like, I would never turn to Trump for advice on like relationships or kindness or empathy, but I'd for sure turn to Trump of like, if I wanted to make a bunch of money and get super wealthy, probably a pretty smart guy, right? Like, yeah. And so have you heard the story about Elon and Bill Gates and how Bill Gates shorted Tesla? Oh,
I didn't know this. No.
It's great. So essentially Bill Gates looked at his like finances and the market and talking to all the smart financial people. And they're basically saying like, there's no way that Tesla should continue to increase in price. And so he decided to short Tesla. And if anybody doesn't know what that means, it basically means that like he makes money if Tesla goes down in value, essentially is what it means. And so Elon found out about it, and he was buddies with Bill Gates at the time, and he just confronted him about it. He was basically like, he's like, why would you short Tesla? Yeah. And he's like, well, we looked at the numbers and yada, yada, yada. It looks like it can't possibly be valued at what it is. And Elon just straight up was like, what do you care about making a buck? Why do you care to make a few, like you're a bazillionaire. Like, why do you care about money? And, and basically Elon was like not friends with him ever since then. Wow. Basically. Cause he was like, Bill, I thought you were into like regenerative, like agriculture and like saving the planet. And you're over here trying to make a buck. Like, what are you doing? Like, why do you even care about that? Yeah. And so it just shows like how pure Elon is like, cause Tesla was started for regenerative reasons, right? Like what's the word I'm trying to say here? Solar panels and basically like trying to prevent global warming and all the other stuff. And it was like, he's just so pure in his mission that it's like, it was never about the money. Yeah, exactly. And now look at him, like just crushing. So,
yeah, exactly. If you focus on what you're up to, I feel the money will come.
Totally. Yeah. I love that. Moving forward here. So I saw recently, you sent me an article about this actually. Imaware was acquired in December 2024. What does that mean for Imaware? Like, where are things going with that? Like, how does that affect you? How does that affect a business? How does something like that look?
Yeah, so certainly, again, in healthcare, it is a huge system, right? I mean, trillion-dollar markets. Everyone talks about how big the TAM is. I mean, it's not quite that big, but to make a mark in healthcare, you really do got to partner up with other companies, with other people. There's no one silver bullet. And there's a lot of big entrenched companies, right? You know, you think of the $100 billion businesses out there in healthcare. For a little startup, you know, to make a dent, it really is about partnering up with other companies. And so we also very quickly learned that diagnostics needs, like if it's ever going to be affordable, where it's not like $500 to do an annual test, it's like $5 or $50. We have to use AI and big data systems and like just really get smart about that. So SuperTruth is a AI company, and at first we were like a vendor partner relationship, and their founder too was just like equally mission driven. And it became very obvious that if we add data and AI to screening, we can start to become so much more predictive around who might get sick, why they might get sick, when they might get sick, what cause they might get sick, based on these biomarkers. And so it became very apparent, if we really want to move the needle and bring the future into the present and speed up Imaware, we have to attach ourselves to an AI engine. I looked at building it. It's going to take forever and, you know, a lot of money, or we can come together with this amazing business partner. And so that's what we did.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excited?
Yeah. I think 2025, as you can see what's happening in ChatGPT and everything else, big LLMs have a place, you know, where we can talk and learn and get all these awesome answers. But I also think in healthcare, we need a very focused, smaller scale LLM that's focused on healthcare data, and maybe even zoom in further, an LLM focused on just diagnostic data, and really get crisp. And I think that's what SuperTruth brings to the table, is this focus on a healthcare data set.
Yeah, that was actually, I mean, you kind of already answered my question, but that was kind of where I was going with this. I was just be curious as to like where you think the evolution of a lot of the healthcare industry is going. And based on kind of what you're talking about here, it sounds like more or less being able to make better use of the data, I guess is probably the easiest way to say it, is like now that we have this ability to connect it through diagnostic testing, like Imaware or wearables or whatever the case might be, I'm sure there's just going to be a lot more emphasis around like, okay, we have all this interesting data, let's actually use it to maybe make better decisions.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what SuperTruth does a really good job is also something called like data decay, or, you know, kind of the recency of the data. So sure, say 10 years ago you got sick and your biomarkers were ABC, and then 30 days ago we have your biomarkers and they're XYZ. A lot of just big systems will look at that data and kind of apply equality to it, for lack of a better word. I think what SuperTruth does a really good job of is applying like recency vectors, decay ratios to all this, so that it understands that, hey, this data from the past is maybe less relevant. And so let's use it as a basis for something, but let's not use it as a way to guide everything. And so I think they've really figured out, again, how to apply data and all of the, what I call vectors on it, you know, the directionality of it. What time was this at? In what context was this? I think they've really figured that out. And in healthcare, that's really important, right? I'll give you a simple example. You can have two patients, and if one person's, you know, cholesterol has been flat for the last 20 years, but it's slightly elevated, or the other patient's is below cutoff, but it's going up like this, who's actually at higher risk? So
I would assume the one going up.
Yeah. But right now in their test, they're below, right? So they come back, check out cholesterol's great, but we got to look at where it's going, how fast it's going there. The person who's 20 years, you know, just slightly elevated, their doctor probably every year says, hey, get on that statin, get on that statin. And yet every year their cholesterol is the same. So their body's in some level of equilibrium, and the other person's is in a state of something's going on, right? And so that vector eventually goes to a place where that person gets more sick or something happens chronically, right? So that's what I like to look at, is to help those people realize they're heading towards some kind of healthcare event, and to get in front of it before they have the heart attack, or before they become diabetic, or before an inflammatory disease takes over, like rheumatoid arthritis, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we're trying to work on, is how do we predict this before that symptom takes hold, right?
How often are you testing yourself, or how often do you get this?
I'm monthly.
Are you? Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I get to use all the cool products. So
I was gonna say,
I use Function Health, I use Keyspan, I use Imaware. I use all of the different products. And we actually have a bunch of these founders in Austin. So
you got the hookup.
Yeah.
Anything, I mean, not that I'm trying to like disclose your medical history or anything, but is there anything like noteworthy that you've discovered or things that like shocked you maybe?
I used one of the aging tests 2.5 years ago, and it said I was 10 years older.
Oh,
I was 44. Actually, it was 12 years. I was 44 years old at the time, and it said I was 56 in my like epigenetic, all those like funny longevity words that I don't know as much about. So I went on a pretty hardcore regime based on the results and the action items to like try and reverse my age. Not Brian Johnson style, you know, that guy's like 18. But some of those things, right? And so to adjust my supplements, to really work on sleep, like really get sleep back in order. And now my test says I'm 39. So that's awesome. So I've been able to like...
How old are you actually?
46.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm not Brian Johnson, but I'm like, or, you know, but I think what's cool about that is that's available for everybody. I think there's, you know, small tweaks to sleep and supplementation, diet and exercise where everybody can kind of maybe find their own version of Fountain of Youth, right? So I think that is available for everybody. And that's one thing these tests have really unlocked is there, you can really easily take control of that lifespan, you know, like, hey, I want to live so the day I die in a healthy state, right? And I think that's available for everybody.
You mentioned sleep. What are maybe the top 3? What are some 2 other ones that you did that were just like the biggest impact?
Sleep.
Really? That much? Okay, wow.
Sleep is huge.
Yeah.
Sleep is awesome, but also what I noticed was it's what you do before you go to sleep and how you wake up, like how you wake up right after sleep, right? So an example of what you do before you go to sleep is I take my magnesium and I try to calm down instead of just like going to bed the moment I pass out with racing thoughts and things. So like calming down a bit, right? So, okay, sleep is better. And then how I wake up. Do I wake up, I'm already sort of jacked on cortisol and I slam 3 cups of coffee? Or do I again ease into my morning, push that coffee off a little bit, take a moment to breathe, you know, and then take on the kids in life? And that has helped. So basically it's sleep plus what happens before and after have been the biggest thing. So what do I eat in the morning? What do I eat at night? How late do I eat? My Whoop told me that if I eat after 6:30, it directly impacts my sleep. If I eat a little earlier, I get even better sleep. So I had like 3 years of data on that one where like that bowl of pasta at 9 o'clock, definitely not a good thing.
Yeah, that's the one thing I can't stop doing is eating too late. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've done some of these like health, what I actually am biologically. And I literally just turned 37. I told you I just had a birthday, but according to my Garmin, I think it says I'm 28.
Damn.
I think is what it is. And I've done the other tests and I'm generally pretty healthy. And I would probably contributed a lot of it to, I mean, generally my lifestyle in general, but also, I'm a psychopath about my sleep to the point where I honestly, I don't like traveling to other time zones for that reason exactly. Is I just value my sleep so much. We were actually like looking at where to travel this next year. And I'm basically like any central time
North,
zone.
south.
Yeah, exactly. I'm basically like, can we go to anywhere in like South America, Mexico, like Central America? Like, let's just stay in the same time zone. I'm that crazy.
Awesome.
Like, I know.
This is the downside or the good side of wearables is like when I travel 6 or more time zones. So my wife's from East Africa. So when I go over that far, that's the same recovery for me as like having 8 drinks. It's that bad. Like it's like 8% recoveries. So I haven't, there's some people out there who are like, oh my God, I wake up fresh on a transatlantic flight. I'm like, I have not figured that part out yet, but
the only thing, we went to Alaska this last year and I did
same time zone, right? Almost.
Yeah, right. And so leading up to it, I used an app called Time Shifter. Don't quote me. I'll have to look it up, but there's that, but actually Garmin has one now too. It's called like a jet lag tracker or something like that. But basically, have you seen these? They're super cool. What, really? Wow. Okay. So basically leading up to your trip, it'll tell you like when you should go to bed, what time you should have your caffeine, what time you should take melatonin. And basically, so it like preemptively starts shifting your circadian sleep cycle so that when you get to your destination, you just don't have any jet lag. You can get right back into a normal sleep rhythm. And we did it when I went to Alaska this last year and it worked like a charm. Like we got there and I was like automatically right into that time zone. So there are ways around it. Like
definitely share that link.
Yeah, that's great. But I wonder if Whoop might have something similar now. I don't know, maybe not. But Yeah, that was a game changer. But anyways, back to your story. So, what's next for you? So like you, after the Imaware thing, and the reason I bring this up is because you have a passion for like startups, creating new ventures, funding new things, really like the earlier stages of business, like things that you've mentioned before. I'd be curious as to like, what are some of the interesting businesses that you started tapping into? What are the new startups? Like what interests you? Like who are you supporting? Who are you advising? Like what's your role in that world?
Yeah. So I've definitely learned, and coming to Austin was really helpful. I think Austin is definitely an ecosystem of people who want to start things, who want to be, challenging status quos and kind of finding other people like them to, partner up with or find co-founders for. So yeah, through that journey, I got to meet Rami, who had founded Matchday. And he had been doing that for a couple of years. I called him like the physician matchmaker, and he was building Tinder for healthcare professionals, right? Helping them find their dream job. So I loved what he was up to, and he had become a friend, and we'd worked together at Imaware, and he had connected me with other people too. So he was already doing his job just by being a friend of mine, right? So I definitely wanted to see him succeed in Matchday. So, put a lot of effort into supporting him there. I think Matchday is doing great things, helping people find their dream job, especially in a day and age where it's like AI-driven job boards, no feedback, thousands of applications, no feedback. So, and that's one example of what I think is just available all the time in Austin. So there's lots of founders here doing lots of amazing things. So I've tried to share my lessons. I mean, I learned some awesome lessons. I learned some really hard lessons. And like I said, go to B school and you can learn about running a business and then go run a business, really feel what it's like to be a business owner.
Because you were involved with, is it Techstars, I think it's called?
Yeah, I helped mentor a few founders there as well. I thought that was an amazing experience to jump in and find these amazing people who had gone into an incubator program and an accelerator program, and to just support them. They're already surrounded by amazing, founders and ex-founders and people. And so to play a small role in just helping guide them where they were going when they were really focused on some healthcare change, I really enjoyed that. And I think that's, to me, I'm really in this idea of like, give what you came here to get kind of mindset, So if I give to those founders, who knows how it'll pay off, but I just know if I'm always out there giving it, it always pays me back in spades. So that's what I'm up to, is really like supporting this healthcare innovation ecosystem in Austin, connecting with other founders. If I can help them avoid a pitfall or to help vet, maybe a capital partner, and just to know the good and bad of what's out there, that makes me feel good and it sets them up for success. And I think that's what it's all about, right? So
how do you keep your pulse on the startups? Because I feel like it's such a, I don't know, like ever evolving, changing. I don't know the word I'm trying to say here, but it's just like, it's so moving and shifting, and people are coming in and businesses are failing, and like the next cool idea, and AI is a thing now, and it maybe won't be tomorrow, and it used to be Bitcoin, and it's, it's like, how do you keep your pulse on all that?
That's a good question. I worry less about what the person's doing, and I focus more on the person and how they feel about what they're doing. So as a founder, when I'm working with people, oftentimes don't really focus on what it is they're doing. Like, hey, you've got this new this or that. I'm not going to be, who am I to tell you that business will or will not succeed? But where I focus my efforts on is like, what's your mindset in this? Why are you doing this? Have you thought about your blind spots? Can I mirror back for you the things you have strength in and maybe your gaps? And that's the kind of focus I bring when I talk to people. It's just like, are you seeing it for, the bigger picture here, right? Or are you kind of drinking your own Kool-Aid and think that everything is just going to fall in place for you, right? So I worry less about like, is your AI better than your AI? And there's a lot of people doing AI something in town, right? But I really get attracted to and like to work with people who are just like curious, open-minded, passionate. And that's where I found myself focusing on and being asked to support people like that.
I feel like it kind of continues to feed your curiosity. I know you have a tendency to be curious about most things, very much so like me. And I'd be willing to bet like dabbling in the startup space continues to scratch that itch, I guess you could say.
Yeah, exactly, right? I've been obsolete like 5 times in my career, right? It's like I was programming in a language called Java, and then I was like, man, everyone's building in this cool new language. So then I worked at Deloitte, and they farmed out all of developers to India, and so I almost lost my job again. And then, then I was working in enterprise, and then like digital came, and that was like, so I've just been obsolete almost so many times in my career. So the only way to keep kind of up with the cool kids is to be curious and to constantly just reinvent myself.
I would say that's the one thing that keeps me from getting afraid.
Yeah.
Because I talk to, as an agency owner myself, I talk to obviously a lot of other agency owners, and actually one recently I was on a run out in New York City with a guy owns an agency that basically, I think their niche is, I think it's like nonprofits of some form. It might actually be healthcare if I remember correctly. But anyways, he was just telling me how fearful he is of the AI. I hate to use that word because it's so buzzy, but like all the new AI technologies and how they can do a lot of the design and the branding, et cetera, whatever. And I don't know, maybe I'm naive, but like I don't have a lot of fear around a lot of this stuff because I just continue to evolve and stay curious and adapt with it. Like I've already started injecting a lot of it into my own business, and I continue to, and I'm sure it'll continue to change how I use these tools that are unique and interesting. And so I guess like, I don't know, maybe there's like a hidden nugget in that for I guess anybody listening of like, maybe staying curious can just like keep you from feeling fearful of what's to come. Because like, I mean, this isn't new for humans, right? Like,
yeah, we've been under threat all our lives.
That's
the machines, the
yeah.
internet, mobile commerce, whatever it was, everything was taking our jobs, right?
100%.
Watch any South Park episode, right?
100%, right? Yeah. And maybe that's the cure to a lot of it, right? Is like, instead of being afraid of it, just be curious about it.
I think if everybody could adopt a little bit of curiosity, we might live in a very different world, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's what it is it's you have fear of change, and the reason you fear it is because you don't understand it, and the quickest way to understand it is to just be curious about it enough to start to learn about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's at the core of fear. Fear is like because you don't know.
Yeah.
And so if you just learned a little, you would know, and maybe you might not be so afraid.
Yeah. Hey, we got to bring back the era of civil discourse, right? Through curiosity. It's like people who vote differently, people who believe in different things can come together if they just get a little curious about each other, right? Back to your thing about AI, you know why I think AI is never taking our jobs is because humans buy from humans at the end of the day. And I love that. I don't know if you ever saw that meme, but it was like the prompt was, show me salmon swimming in a river. And it had a salmon fillet swimming in the river instead of an actual salmon.
No.
Oh my God, this is the funniest thing. When I saw that, I'm like, yeah, AI is not taking our jobs anytime soon. And so, yes, it will support humans who use AI, right? They say like, it's not AI that'll, kill us off. It'll be the people who use AI will be the threat. So yeah, I don't think AI is going to take everyone's jobs, but it will certainly equip those who use it to continue to, grow and be curious. So
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, and like all technology has always done every single time is we assume that it takes jobs, and it also actually ends up adding more jobs than it takes away. In
a different place, right? In a different way. And so you got to be curious to see what those next jobs might be, right? Instead of being closed-minded to it. So yeah.
100%. Wow, we got super philosophical there for a second. that got super...
I like that.
What do you think the biggest mistakes are that founders make early in their business, early in their career, especially in the healthcare industry? Like, what are the biggest mistakes they make?
I think it's so easy as a founder to drink your own Kool-Aid because you have to, right? You have to have such conviction in your belief, what you're up to, and that can create the biggest blind spot, right? It's like, oh, nobody's buying my product. Well, it's not because of that. It's because the customer doesn't know, what I'm selling yet. So I double down on what I'm building, And so I think the idea is definitely to check in with yourself and maybe even have people. You may not like their feedback, but at least they're giving you feedback. They're a mirror for you. So I think a lot of founders can benefit from whether they're coaches or mentors, but just somebody to give them honest feedback. And lots of times it's not a massive pivot that the founder needs, but just a subtle adjustment, a little bit of tweaking and tuning, right? Their vision's probably spot on. Their passion for it's probably in the right spot, but it's just those little, vectors and change a lever here and there. And you don't get that from yourself if you're drinking your own Kool-Aid. So I think a lot of founders could benefit from, that kind of a good mentor or two, or certainly at least getting their product out there and being open to feedback, right? A lot of founders say they're open for feedback, but they really aren't.
It's
So I'd say that's an area for sure.
It's hard, man.
Yeah.
It really is. And I get it. It's something that I've, again, with those like community events and stuff that I host, is I try really hard to be like, I want feedback. Like, tell me how this can improve. And oftentimes, I'll be honest, I don't agree with it. And there's also times where I'm like, that was terrible advice. And there's often times where I'm like, that really hurt my feelings. But at the end of the day, it's necessary, right? It's
Yep.
like, I don't like to use the word thick skin. I prefer to say like just emotional agility, I guess, is like there has to be some degree to be able to take that feedback and not take it personal.
Yep.
Right. It's not that you don't feel it. That doesn't hurt your feelings. Like, we're humans, hopefully. Like, that's totally normal, but there has to be some degree of that. I think about it when I used to compete in bodybuilding shows, and it was like the only time that I really had like a dedicated coach, like going up to these shows. And I can tell you without question, I would not have done as well as I did had I not had a coach, because I needed somebody to give me their objective opinion on what I was doing and how I was looking and all the other things that go into bodybuilding that like I wouldn't have been able to do myself. I would have filled myself with my own Kool-Aid and been like, look how good you look and you're doing great. And like, you can have a donut because it doesn't matter. And it's like, no, like I needed somebody objective to be like, yo, we still need to shed 5 more pounds. You're still looking like whatever it is, right?
Yep.
Like, you need that. But the same thing for a business is you need some objective opinion. And yeah, I don't know if it's a coach or a mentor. I'd be curious as to like what you've used in your own life that's worked. But yeah, you need some outside source somewhere.
Customers, oftentimes you can go be curious with them and ask them. People who've done it before, and have won or succeeded, won or failed in their business. Sometimes the founders who didn't have the great exit are actually great sources of feedback. So they can teach you lessons learned. I think talking to everybody is a source of feedback. And yeah, feedback is neutral at the end of the day. It's like they're not attacking you. They're just giving you their feedback. So take it from a place of, hey, it's just neutral. Now I can do something with that, or choose not to do something with that. But if I hear 100 people say the same thing over again, well, maybe there's something there, right? So yeah, ego gets in the way of founders a lot, I think, sometimes. And some of them have monster egos and do incredibly well with that ego. And other people, that ego totally derails them from the success that they could have, right?
Do you know Seth Godin?
Feel like I do, but
he's like a best-selling author, marketer. He's for sure the person I turn to in terms of marketing. He's like one of the smartest people that I've never met him. He's just a lot of content. He's been blogging every single day for the last like 20 years, I think it is. But anyways, the only reason I bring him up is that I think that he has a great way of looking at his feedback. So he's written, I think, like 20 books now at this point. Many of them are bestsellers. And he says that he never looks at the 5-star reviews, and he never looks at like the 1 or 2-star reviews. Mm-hmm. And the reason that he doesn't look at those is because the 5-star reviews are always just going to be like, you're amazing, you're great. And that really all that does is feed your ego. Yeah. And he also doesn't look at the 1 or 2-star reviews is because like it wasn't for them.
Yeah.
I didn't write it for them, or I didn't create the product for them, or I didn't build it for them. They were the wrong person. Yeah. And so it's the ones in the middle where it's like they have probably the most constructive and useful feedback. Yeah. Is like they were the right person, but something just didn't click or something didn't resonate. And like, so those are the best people to pay attention to and then to ignore the outskirts.
Wow. Yeah.
I just think that's great advice.
Yeah. But, that's awesome.
Yeah. I'm surprised I haven't heard Seth Godin.
I feel like you've probably told me about him too. Yeah.
Probably.
What that tells me is I need to make more time to read.
So you've often spoken about this a few times, and you touched about it briefly, about just kind of the startup vibe of Austin. Yeah. Do you mind elaborating a little bit on that? And like, what do you think it is that makes Austin unique in terms of just like innovations and startups and some of these companies that are starting? Well,
I think it's, I love that Austin has this keep Austin weird kind of vibe, which means it already welcomes people, and people love to come to Austin because there's something different here. Who knows what the different is, but it's different. And then, especially when you compare to other startup places, call it the coasts, they're very established, they're almost to the point of like, it's rigid how it is, right? This is the process. This is who comes here. This is how you do it. This is how you win. And so startups by nature are actually not rigid, right? They're like, hey, I have this idea. I don't know what it's going to look like. My vision's this. And so when you can come to a place that's flexible, that is malleable. I think that's what Austin has, is it's got a bunch of people who don't quite know what success looks like, and maybe they've won in the past on the shores, but they're coming here for something different, and they can't quite explain what that different is. And that's what I think makes Austin amazing for the startup scene, is like, I just have a vision. I don't know how it's going to go. So you can walk in a coffee shop, you can go to an event like yours, you can meet somebody random and just sort of start, having a conversation and make the bold ask, like, hey, you want to work together? Or, hey, would you invest in my idea? Because everything just feels like everything's possible, right? I feel like people in Austin are possibilitarians. I'm going to make up this word, but it's like, it just feels like there's something in the air because you come here because of possibility, right? Not because of how rigid it is. Because if you want to launch a drug in healthcare, you go to Boston, or if you're in diagnostics, or if you want to launch a tech app, you go to these places where you know how to do it. The process is well baked, the money's there, and the ingredients are there. But if you don't quite know what you want to do, but you want to be surrounded by people who are just inspiring you, I think you come to Austin.
Do you think there's anywhere else like that?
I don't think there is. I think like maybe you get like your Denver or your kind of Nashville.
Fair.
But I think there's a very unique vibe to Austin, and it is that collision of college town, music town, and tech. I think there's just this, and then you've got SpaceX, and you got all these other random people coming in who are doing awesome things. And then you got legacy, like, Dell and just all the legacy that's here. And I think there's just an awesome creative collision. I don't think there's another city like that.
Of all the people I've had on the show, I can definitely definitively tell you that every time I've asked somebody about that, about like that culture, that vibe, I would also add to everything you just said, one component of it, the health industry. Is like, there seems to be like an emphasis on just like health and wellness and just generally being happier at the end of the day, happier and healthier for the most part. Yeah. There's a little bit more grind, I would say, on the coast. Versus here, it's like a little bit more like, I also want to like get a sauna and cold plunge in.
300 days of sun. We'll do that to you here in Austin, right? Just like a good appreciation for just living, right? God, I hear Matthew McConaughey in my head, right?
All right. I wanted to quickly touch on this too. Before I got a round of rapid fire questions here before you to wrap things up. But before I do, you seem to love F1 and cars. Is that like a generational thing? Like, where does this come from for you? Like, how do you incorporate this like love for cars and racing and F1 and I guess general hobbies outside of business? Like, how does that play into things?
My grandfather was a mechanic, so when I was super young, I got to watch him, just repairing cars all the time. And then, I watched one of his cars had this like Mustang, had a 5-liter V8, and it just sounded awesome. And then he did a burnout in it, and I was like, damn, that's just like, I just thought that was the coolest shit when I was like 8 years old. And then I just realized that programming. So when I got into computers and stuff, was like, that's kind of like being a mechanic, and you're building things or tuning things and fixing things, and your code's busted and got bugs. And so I just found there like that to be really cool in that sense. And then I married those two worlds. I started tuning cars in college for guys that were putting turbos and superchargers on. Their cars wouldn't idle right, and they'd be too rich, or they'd stink like gas. And I'm like, you know what? Actually, I know how to plug my laptop into your chip and tune that. And so I actually started making money doing that. And I started tuning all these Mustangs across North America, got into drag racing. So I put programming computers together with cars. And so that's just been my kind of passion and love ever since. And then moving to Austin, we got F1 in our backyard, and what an awesome event. I mean, to just go and watch these cars freaking cruise, and it is unbelievable. And it is the epitome of engineering and programming and data, right? I mean, that car is generating gigabytes of data. And so then I just keep thinking, imagine we could generate that kind of data about our human body, and how fine-tuned and amazing, and how great would our bodies live if we could have that kind of data about ourselves. So it makes me recognize the gap between like these F1 cars and where we're at with healthcare data, right? So yeah, it's kind of fun to stay in that hobby because it's actually really connected to what I'm up to, which is just like healthcare data.
Yeah, I honestly didn't tie that together until you just explained that. That's really interesting, the correlation there. That's really coming together for me. Interesting. Because when you were explaining that, my first thought was actually initially, I was like, why are you in healthcare if you're like into cars as much? But now I see actually the correlation between like, if we could get the same data that we know about a car in our health, in our well-being, man, that'd be incredible.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I'm sure we're on that trajectory.
Absolutely.
For sure.
We go from measuring ourselves once every 2 years to now we're into like measuring maybe quarterly, and then wearables are measuring daily and hourly and down to the second. It's, eventually we're going to have more data on ourselves, right? So it's going that way.
I got a round of rapid fire questions for you.
All right.
It's whatever the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
What's your best business advice?
Get started.
What's your best marketing advice?
Talk to your customers.
I love that one. People don't say that one enough. Favorite part about entrepreneurship?
Doing what you love.
When are you the most productive?
4 a.m.
Do you have coffee at that point or
no?
Nope. Fresh 4 a.m.
Oh, and that's not a stay up till 4 a.m. That's a fall asleep at 7 o'clock with the kids and then wake up at 4 a.m.
I assumed that. I did not think you were pulling all nighters. You need your sleep, man. Who is your inspiration?
My parents, actually.
Love that.
Yeah, my dad was a construction entrepreneur. My mom was a nurse, and so I've taken a little bit of them is in everything I do.
Are your parents still around?
Yep.
Is your dad still doing the construction thing?
Oh, they're 70s and retired.
Okay.
But yeah.
Did he sell out of it, or what did he do?
Yeah, he kind of just wound it down one day. Yeah.
Man, I've been searching. That's what I'm looking for. When I was talking to you earlier about like acquiring, I'm trying to find like these like 60, 70-year-olds that are like, they're kind of done with it, but they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like set me up. Like,
yeah, there was a viable business right there.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
100%. Yeah.
Anyways, what would you change about yourself?
I am who I am. I would actually change the idea that I am actually hard on myself. I'm constantly saying like, why didn't I do this, instead of celebrating what I did do? And just like, I'm trying to lean into that a lot more. It's just like, hey, life is going to life. I'm always going to find ways to fall short, but let's celebrate what I actually do accomplish.
I think that's very common for high achievers, I'll be honest. What's one secret or just something most people don't know about you?
I actually love comedy, and I did improv classes, and I'm sometime going to be an aspiring comedian one day.
On my website, I have a section that's like about me, and it's like if you click it, it gives me like some extra facts.
Yeah.
And one of them is like I drink way too much coffee, but one of them is like I want to be a stand-up comedian. It's like future goal. It's
All right, we got to go to Comedy Mothership then, right? Joe Rogan, we're coming.
What's your favorite app or resource right now?
That is a good question. Resource. I'm going to go with an old school cookbook, and it's just eating healthy, but it's recipes that aren't just like super boring or just getting your macros. It's actually like how to make healthy eating. And so it's Kenji Lopez. This guy is an engineer that turned chef. And that book, it's old school, it's tactile, it's paper. And it's like, you want to make a great tasting burger, you want to make your own sausage, you want to make a healthy salad. It's like, and in trying to be in healthcare and eat healthy, I don't Google, what's a healthy breakfast. I just turn to this book. And so as a resource, that is definitely the number one resource. So yeah, Kenji Lopez is an awesome engineer turned chef. And anybody who's like wants to cook like building Legos with massive instructions and a precision on how to do it so it tastes great, yeah, that's my recommendation. Otherwise, I can't do shit with cooking. Like, I don't know how much of this and that to add, right? Probably my favorite app though is honestly just like Calm. Being able to just like actually force calmness on myself, to block out those times and like go into like some level of like still, calm, meditate, breathe, like just take moments for myself. I find that and other apps like that are great at just like giving yourself 10 minutes to do that. It's pretty hard to do that without that sort of app support when you're like, busy running around all day.
Totally.
Yeah.
I use Insight.
And there's a bunch of those like types of apps like that. But
yeah. I use Insight Timer.
Yeah.
Is my go-to. This is very similar.
Yeah, I like the dong on that one, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Dong.
And the customizable image and dong sound. That's a great one.
What keeps you motivated?
Vision. I think I've come to learn that I used to have goals, and the goals can fizzle out. The goals, if I tell them to people, like you've even said, it's like you can get the win just from saying your goal. But vision is like, hey, what am I up to here that may be even bigger than me, that requires me to connect with other people, that is bigger than myself? And so, yeah, my vision is what, helps me just get up at night, go to bed, take care of my kids, live my best life, because yeah, my vision is that I want to see a world where people don't die of preventable disease. So
I love that. It's the difference between push versus pull, I think, too, right? Is that I think you can will yourself to do really anything, but only for so long, versus something that pulls you. You have unlimited energy and resources to continue to pursue that thing.
I couldn't have ever said that better than you just did. Push versus pull. That's awesome.
What's your favorite part about Austin? And you can't say the people.
I love that there is very little traffic. People are going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? Coming from Toronto, it would take 20 minutes to get on the freeway. In 20 minutes, I can get anywhere in Austin. I can explore any part of Austin. I can be eating a taco anywhere in Austin in 20 minutes.
Breakfast tacos specifically.
At dinner.
Yeah. Last question.
Yeah.
Before I do, though, I want to acknowledge you. Kind of what I said in the beginning of this episode is I just want to acknowledge your intentionality, man. Is like, it's fun to watch you continue to just like hustle and work hard and pursue and go after the things you want, but then also being intentional about spending time with your family and slowing down and finding time for peace and calm and quiet. And I don't know you super well, but based on what I've seen, I feel like you've probably gotten a lot better about knowing where to allocate that intentionality. And so I just want to acknowledge that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, definitely getting smarter on it and still work to do. But yeah. Cool. Thank you. Yeah.
Before I ask my last question, though, what's your plug? Where can people find you?
Surprisingly, my social of choice is LinkedIn. I'm not as cool on all the others, but find me on LinkedIn. And to that end, anyone who's thinking about anything around entrepreneurship, Austin startups, all that, I love talking about it. Happy to support. So find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Jani in Austin, so very easy to find.
Cool.
Yeah, that's where you can find me.
Last question. It's whatever your best piece of advice is. So if you were to go back to ground zero and to give yourself or somebody in your same circumstance a piece of advice about business, whether it's starting their business or starting their startup or whatever it is, what's maybe the best piece of advice you would give to them or your younger self?
Yeah. Just get started, right? The more you tell yourself you can't do it, it's like an ant kind of, digging out dirt from inside the earth. You will start to turn that little bit of dirt into a little molehill and eventually into a mountain. And that's you digging against yourself. So the faster you can just wrap your head around the idea of like, I got to do this, I get to do this, I choose to do this, you've turned your own mountain into a little molehill you can step into. So I've learned this. I'm in my own way in everything in life. So just take that first step.
Love it. Yanni, thanks for being on the show, brother.